Good morning, everyone.
Men with a rusticated.
We have a quorum, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 2012 Suffolk County Council on Environmental Quality meeting. I just want to remind everyone this is a public meeting. If you have something you would like to speak about, please wait until that item is on the agenda, and you're more than welcome to speak. Okay. Has anyone had a chance to read the minutes?
I did.
Rich, how were they?
Perfectly adequate.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? Tom, seconded by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
I
passed.
abstain. Christine?
Okay. Can I have an extra agenda? Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, correspondence. I think everybody had it in their packet. You saw the letter to Councilman Sloan, inviting him on meeting to we could introduce ourselves to him. Christine told me this morning she has not heard back yet.
No.
Perhaps he'll respond in the next few weeks, and then we'll invite him for the next month's meeting. We'll see. Other correspondence, the Suffolk County Sewer District's capital project summary.
Michael said to mention that this is part of the CEQ request to DPW. This is in response to our request for the sewer projects.
Okay.
And then there's one more thing on the agenda for the Department of Health Services regarding a fire.
Yes. Okay, everybody also saw in the packet the potential use of fire wells to help mitigate brush fires at Suffolk County Parks. That was in Sarah Lansdale.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any questions or concerns?
Well, are we going to do that as an agenda item?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We'll go on there. Okay. Historic Trust docket.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Parks Department is still negotiating and working on the contract with the Maritime Museum. The Commissioner has met with Steve Jones, the Director of the museum, to go over his questions and concerns, and there are some questions on the insurance that's now required. So that's still being worked out, but it is moving forward. We are also working on requests for proposals for concessionaires, the caterers for both Timber Point and West Sayville, and I think a letter was sent to the council to ask to Mary Ann Spencer to please join us on that committee to review those requests for proposals.
I cannot.
Okay.
Mary Ann, go ahead. What was your response?
I'm unavailable
Okay.
on the 17th.
The dates aren't set yet. They're I can review that further with you later, but the exact dates. Okay. They're not. They actually will work around your schedule, and they're not set yet.
Oh, in that case, I would be delighted.
Rich, quick
Yeah.
question on these leases. This is for the catering, you said?
Yes.
Lessings is up?
Yes. Yeah. At the end of this year, the both of them are up. So Parks likes to get it done as soon as possible because of the booking issue. People like to book their weddings a year in advance. So we want this decided as soon as possible on who would be running it next year.
Out of curiosity, and you don't have to do the exact numbers or anything like that, has it been a successful operation over there, both for Lessings and for the county?
Yes, I can say for both. There is always a capital improvement part of the budget that they have to invest into the sites that goes towards the buildings and the running of the facility. That's why the Historic Trust review and involvement is so important on how that money could be spent to help maintain and restore the buildings. And Lessings has reported to me that their numbers are up, especially at West Sayville, with the landscape improvements and building repairs that both Parks and Lessings have done. So that one has really gone up in the past couple of years.
I have a question, Richard, on the improvements that they provide. Do they have to go through county contract, or they can do that by themselves?
They can do it by themselves.
And it's much cheaper?
Yes.
That's what I understand, without having to go through state contract.
Usually, yes. Yep.
I'm glad to hear that because my daughter got married at West Sayville.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we went there, of course, was the location, and the second was the reputation of Lessings.
Okay.
So I can understand why they want to have that locked in.
Right.
Weddings are planned a year in advance, and you want to know it's still going to be Lessings when you show up for your wedding.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
it's good.
Richard, Michael has a note on here about about having a meeting for CEQ.
Yes. We've discussed in the past of having meetings at different historic sites over the course of the year. One of the suggestions has been to go to the Van Borgendine House in Babylon. And so we are suggesting that as a location.
Okay, I'm fine with that as a location. Shall we try and do it in June or July? Is it too soon to plan it that quickly?
No, the house is ready to use right now. So whenever, you decide according to the agenda, we can set it up very quickly with last minute notice.
I'd like to do it when it's still warm, not in November.
Well, this is, that's
what happened before.
That's true with some of our sites, but this one is fully functioning, up and running. It's a home, and it does have heat. So it would be nice to go in the summer, but it does have heat.
Okay, thank you.
But I think, Christine, if, see what your agenda is,
Sure.
And then you could decide, just tell me, and it's no problem to set it up the week before.
Oh, okay. Anything else, Rich?
Just with the housing program, we have 3 vacancies, one at the Maritime Museum, one at the new Norfolk Preserve, which is not a historic site, and one at a new cottage that's been added to the program at South Haven County Park that I think would be eligible for the historic program. And there'll be a countywide memo sent out to see what county employees might be interested in these sites. But there's none of these sites I'm concerned about at the moment being vacant, but they should be filled within a few months.
Alrighty, moving along. Recommended type 2 actions. Ratification of recommendations for legislative resolutions laid on the table April 24th, 2012 and May 8th, 2012. Has it been on packets?
Yes, everything's pretty straightforward. I will note that IR 1448 in the packet is also on your agenda. It's the fire wells in Caring Parks.
That's in the late starter
It
package.
was a late starter, yeah. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward.
So you've been called back to the big leagues here?
I guess.
Wow.
I was asked to stand in. He thinks I'm a rookie, though.
Did you have experience? Do you remember the job at all?
Tom?
What'd you say your name was?
My name's Larry Swanson.
Will we discuss the wells at a different time, or is this the moment to...
No, it's at the end. It's on the agenda, the last thing.
Is there a motion?
Motion accept staff recs.
Second.
Is there a second? Seconded by Rich. All in favor?
Hey.
Motion passed. Okay. Alrighty. The next several type 2 actions are proposed improvements to different sewer districts in the county. We also have the Suffolk County Sewer District's capital project summary, outlining the different districts and what different improvements they are undergoing or will be undergoing in the future. And who's going to speak? Good morning.
Morning, Ben Wright with Public Works. The 4 projects that we sent in a short EAF for are almost identical except in different sewer districts, different amount of money, different capital projects. But if I could talk about all 4 and if there's any questions, because we do have some aging force mains and sewers, going back 35 or 40 years. A lot of it's asbestos cement pipe. It's more susceptible to corrosion and failure. We've had situations in the past where we had to respond in the middle of the night, etc., and trying to be proactive with the systems. And these 4 districts have pumping stations that have force mains that have had some problems, and we're looking to do in-kind replacement. And in some of them, Sewer Districts 5 and 11, there may be sufficient funds that once we take care of that force main, we could go into the sewer system and address some of the gravity system that needs some work and rehabilitation. So what we've included in the short EAF is pictures of the force main, or the pumping station rather, where the force main is initiated, and then also a district boundary, because somewhere in that district, and we haven't identified them all yet, there are some gravity portions of it that we'd like to replace in kind. So we're looking for you know, an acceptance of a type 2 that we expend these funds on in-kind repair and replacement of the sewer system. And we'll probably be doing, we're asking for additional funds in the future and coming back here if that's necessary.
Just for my own edification, looking at the drawings in each of the packets, I'm assuming that when you have PS with a number, PS is pumping
That's
station?
pumping station, yes.
There's one in Stony Brook that's marked TS. What is that?
That's probably a
That's
mistake.
what I was thinking. That's on the map of the district.
Oh, transfer station.
What exactly
What
is one?
exactly is that?
That's,
I can guess.
all the other pumping stations go to that station, and then that transfers the sewage up to SUNY where it's treated, at Sewer District 21.
Oh, so there's no ground recharge over here?
No.
It goes
No,
up-
that plant was
this is-
abandoned in, you know, the 80s.
All right, so this is the Port Jeff discharge pipe.
Yes.
One other question. These are asbestos-laden pipes, from what you just said and from personal knowledge. I'm just curious. Asbestos, when it's friable and gets into the air, is a dangerous situation. We're talking about sewers, so I'm not expecting people to really be exposed to them. But it does go up to the SUNY plant, and then there is a discharge pipe out into Port Jeff Harbor. Does the plant pick up the asbestos, or what happens?
Well, we don't sample for it, but the procedure is with any asbestos in the pipe itself, where it has to be basically encapsulated before it's removed in a proper disposal.
Yeah, but I'm talking about right now. If there's basically pieces being knocked off of the pipe, let's make it simple.
Well, they don't necessarily get to the plant. You know, they may get further into the system where we'd have to, at some point, remove them.
Okay, but the station itself, the treatment facilities don't treat for it.
No.
And don't look for it.
Rich?
There's no increase in capacity of any of these plants.
No, this is just replacement
This
of
is just,
in-kind.
everything will be the same after as it
Yes,
is now.
this is not addressing
Except that it
capacity
will
at all.
be more updated.
Yes.
Unlisted?
It's a
replacement.
No, this is replacement in kind. so it's-
Replacement type 2.
Just a second.
Go ahead, Larry.
I probably should recuse myself from the vote for the Stony Brook one, so if you did it
I'll do it
3
separately.
yeah.
All right, do I hear a motion for the sewer district number 5, Strathmore Huntington? And
It's Huntington and it's
Yes.
fine.
type 2 on, okay.
Yes.
Is there a second? Rich seconded, all in favor? Motion passes.
Because he works on the, he works his term.
Is there a motion for sewer district number 7, Medford?
Motion, type 2,
Oh, negative. Okay.
negative.
Is there a second?
Second.
Rich seconded, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Is there a motion for sewer district number 10 in Stony Brook?
Motion, type 2.
Second.
Rich seconded. Larry's refusing. Okay, all in favor? Motion passes. Is there a motion for sewer district number 11 in Selden?
Motion, type 2, negative.
Rich seconded. Is there, all in favor? Aye, motion passes. Okay. Ben,
Thank you.
One quick question, I think, for Larry. Following up on what I was talking about a moment ago. Again, you look at friable asbestos getting into the atmosphere, and that's a primary danger that people see from asbestos. If it's in the water and it's going through these pipes and it eventually ends up in Port Jeff Harbor, has anyone ever seen any impacts on the fish populations? I mean, has there ever been any sampling or looking? Or?
If it's in the water, it's probably the best place for it.
It was almost the same.
No? Thank you for the environmental.
Yeah. Okay, recommended unlisted actions. Proposed rehabilitation of Browns Creek Bridge, known as Bryan's Bridge, CP 5850, Town of Islip. Good morning. Please state your name and
Kyle Swearingen, Suffolk County DPW, Bridges and Structures. We're going to be planning on replacing that bridge with a precast concrete arch structure due to the deteriorated nature of the existing bridge. We have our design consultant, LKD, can answer any questions if you have any.
I'm Wayne Culver from Lockhart and Bartlett, and this is Maureen Rachel, my colleague. As Kyle said, the bridge was built in 1936. It's heavily deteriorated now, particularly on the outer girders. It's really at best. They had tried to repair it 10 years ago, 10, 50 years ago, and all those repairs have failed and more are there. So repairing is not a feasible alternative at this point. The new bridge will be longer than this one, and that's something that really concurs with what the state DEC is looking for, to allow more flow into the tidal areas. So we're going out like 25% additional span. And it also has the added benefit of helping in construction, because we can build behind the existing abutment and the existing wing walls, and it'll minimize the disruptions during construction. Well, that's basically a synopsis. Any questions?
Do you need state permits to do this?
Yes, we're applying, they'll be going out shortly. We've sent some letters. It'll be for the DEC, the freshwater permit, and also the joint permit.
But they haven't done their review yet.
They have not. We have sent letters out, and the permits are going out shortly as soon as we get some responses back.
Tom?
Do you have a window of time during the seasons that you would prefer to do construction? I didn't see anything written. There's really, I mean, obviously it's more difficult in the winter. There's no real sensitive area unless the DEC identifies something that would be. At this point, we're not aware of any, biological or marine life that would be affected. But obviously, we would, do that if need be. As we stand now, the final plans will be ready by late summer, early fall. So the chances are to be constructed next spring. So you said you're not aware of any biological effects? Does that mean you're not aware of effects that might happen, or that you looked at it and you know there won't be effects? No, we're not. We don't believe there will be any. I mean, the only thing would be is if there's any specific organisms that are identified that would be affected by it. TISA stuff. Yeah. No, I was just thinking more about siltation and disruption. And sometimes the spring is worth avoiding from a lot of different habitat timing point of view, but that's probably something that DEC will give you some advice about. Yeah, they probably would, and I mean, we'll certainly use turbidity curtains, which will help. And again, the old bridge is outlined here, and we're going to literally build behind it, so we'll be able to leave all that sheathing in place. So it really will help in that regard.
What is the clearance going to be between the mean high water line and the
bottom of the bridge?
And the bridge.
Let's see, it'll be about 5.5 feet.
And so since you're rebuilding, and what is your lifespan for rebuilding?
This should be, 50 years, I would think, and it could last beyond that. It's hard to project beyond it, but it's a precast arch. There's very little maintenance required. It's a very high quality concrete, and there's really nothing to do with it after the bridge is in place.
I'm just wondering if you should account for sea level rise.
The tidal flow, it's not really used. It's not a navigable waterway, first of all, and we're not, as I had said, we're increasing the area and the width-wise. So it's not a question of like a river where we're going to be overflowing. I think so. I don't think that that'll really be a factor.
It looks like this is a WPA bridge. I see a plaque in there on page 10 of the photographs.
Yes.
Which looks like that. If possible, can you say if that plaque has some historic significance? I mean, the architecture is unmistakable. The second thing is, following up on what Larry is talking about, Gloria says she knows the area, and you can see it in the pictures, it's pretty heavily phragmited.
Right.
It looks like, I believe you said a moment ago that you're going to be expanding the channel size.
Yes.
Okay, so that hopefully will promote some better tidal flushing. Do you know what the tidal range is in that area?
It's very low. If we have it noted here, it's about 1.5 feet, 1.6 feet from mean high water to mean low water.
Has anyone looked at the impact of this bridge in terms of, well, the hydrodynamics and also the basically the Spartina to the north of it? What it boils down to is we have a number of areas where there is constricted flow.
Right.
Through the years, and when you have constricted flow, quite often phragmites will take over from the Spartina alterna flora that normally would grow in this area.
Right.
Okay, you can see that there's a saltwater component to it just looking at the maps, looking at the fact that there's a 1.5 foot tidal flow, etc.
See?
Sometimes there's a lot of talk right now under the Suffolk County Wetlands Management Plan about basically trying to make sure that new structures, when they go in, don't impede tidal flow, or else if they're repaired, or again, if new structures go in, that they don't, that they might help or enhance.
Right.
Has anyone looked at that particular component of this? I mean, you're obviously widening the abutments that's going on. I think the number I looked at was about 25%, something like that.
Yes.
But has anyone looked at the impacts that this bridge might be having?
Specific impact that would be? No, we haven't done any study in that regard. We just know, as you said, that it will help, and it's following the DEC guidelines. It wasn't really part of our mandate to do that. I think it's better, you know, the other, I guess you could make it even longer, you know, be more costly. Obviously, it's better than it will be.
The span between abutments, that's what we might be looking at.
Right.
Again, I'm not suggesting a total rebuild or anything like that. It's just, to put it very bluntly, DPW was involved in the Wetlands Management Plan to some degree. I mean, they're on the steering committee, et cetera. And you're looking at an extensive area of wetland vegetation, whether it's good or bad. And it seems to my eye that there may be a disconnect between what you guys are looking at in terms of road and trying to carry the road across the river or the creek over here, and some ancillary issues.
Okay.
And you know, I was hoping, basically, I'm driving at, if you will, a little bit maybe better coordination between the two sectors of DPW and maybe the Department of Health. If I may be so bold, I normally don't try and get into redesign of projects or anything like that, but it might not be, I'll throw this out to the group, it might not be a bad idea to have them talk to the Department of Health, Water Quality Unit, and see if we have an opportunity here with maybe a couple of tweaks to, you know, have this project done, but at the same time, eliminate, if there's any problems seen, eliminate any impedances to the tidal currents, and maybe use this to knock off some of the phragmites. That's really what I'm driving at.
Go ahead, Tom.
The photograph seems to indicate that the vegetation above and below the bridge
Right.
kind of the same.
Yes.
And the bathymetry is the same above and below the bridge and underneath the bridge. Right?
Right,
I think you said that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's not really a difference in levels or a scouring and a limitation of flow at the bridge. So it feels like if you're already going 25% more,
That will help.
that sounds like it, you know, it's better and it's better enough.
Oh, I don't deny it's an improvement.
I think we're already
I'm
getting
just trying to
better at a place
look
that
ahead
doesn't need to
little
be that much different.
Yeah, I think that's largely true. There is a noted difference of the area where the wetland starts. So it's higher down, you know, outside of the bridge. So it does have some effect. It is affecting it, whether it's just the natural channel that's there or not. Now we have historical maps where they put the first bridge in, and it was actually a much narrower channel, but it was in a different spot. You know, they love to move things around. So it's actually wider than it was, you know, going back historically. But I think it will, you know, I think your point is well taken. It's pretty much the same.
Are there any flooding problems here?
No, none of them identified.
Because this is, you know, a stream or a river and everything else like that, and even during high rainstorms, they don't have any flooding problems in this area. So there's no restrictions.
I have
No.
one thing to add. If it's a really high tide or a storm tide, it will flood the little dirt road that goes over to the John Roosevelt Estate, which is on the northwest side of the bridge. You can see it in this color photo. Dan?
I wanted to add to Michael's comment. There, when you when you go inside the Meadowcroft Estate there, on the east side, there still is a patch of Spartina. Gosh, it's no more than 15 feet by 10 feet. It's the last thing that's left over 100 acres. There used to be all Spartina, and it's sort of desperate now just to keep kayakers from going through there to use that as access to the creek. And for people that don't know, that estate, and you know, Richard could verify this too, was originally designed as a water park. So the Browns River was diverted, kind of oxbows were created, and now over the past 100 years, there's quite a bit of sediment in there. So, you know, not knowing about anything about hydraulics, I don't know if increasing the flushing would eliminate some of the sedimentation that's in the area, or what, or how it would affect, you know, vegetation and so forth.
It's more the salinity more than anything else.
I see.
If you put a channel up there, you still wouldn't get any kind of a tidal bore that would create a scouring effect. It's simply too far up, and basically your scouring effect would be on the downside. You don't have enough water being impounded up there to scour out. That's, for example, the problem I have in Stony Brook Harbor. The back end gets a 6-foot rise in water, but there's no power behind it, so the southern end fills up and it doesn't scour out, whereas the north end has plenty of scour. So,
Larry?
I'd like to go back to the issue of sea level. It's conceivable that in 50 years that sea level will be 1.5 to 2 feet higher than today. It's also likely that the tidal range, because of that sea level rise, will increase in this body of water. So if you sort of look at your drawing, the likelihood of a storm high water getting well up into the curved part of your arch is very likely, and I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be prudent, if you're building this for 50 years, to put another foot of elevation, a 1.5 feet of elevation in your bridge.
I think as far as handling the water flow, it's really, you know, still will handle it. As it gets up into the arch, it'll more closely, actually it comes up vertical, so even then you would still be in the vertical portion, so you'd have the full width before you get into the arch, and it would still be wider than what we have out there now. If we were to add a foot or 1.5 feet to the, you know, raise up the structure, you know, that would certainly be more of an impact on your approaches and more costly. Significantly, yeah. That would be the downside to that. So I think the net effect in both cost and impacts, you'd have to grade out into the area around it to accommodate that.
I'm going to make a recommendation to you guys. It won't be part of any motion here, but I really would have, or I would request, that you guys talk with Dominic Ninavaji at Vector Control and see what he thinks about maybe a tweak here and there in terms of tidal flow. This is one of the areas that has been talked about for wetland restoration.
Okay.
All right, and we have a number of different areas that have been looked at. I'm vice chairman of the committee that looks at it. And, you know, we're talking about a fair expanse. It's Phragmites, so I'm not sure that there's very much West Nile in there or anything like that. But I'm jumpy about it is what it boils down to. And again, you may be widening it considerably,
right,
but there may be a tweak here and there
right,
that could be done. So I would suggest that you talk to him and just show him the plan and see what he thinks, if there's any improvements or anything like that.
Sure.
That's basically what I was alluding to with one department not talking to another.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, now's the opportunity, sir.
Yeah. So now remember, because DEC might spot it, might not.
Right. Right.
Okay, they have different regulations, and they're not focused on this kind of stuff.
Rich?
Okay, I just want to point out for the record that the property north of this bridge The driveway to Meadowcroft is there, and all the property is listed on the National Register and also dedicated to the Suffolk County Historic Trust. That's the John Roosevelt Estate. And also the plaque that's being removed from the WPA project, if that could be turned over to Parks and put into the archives there.
It could. No, it's not actually from the WPA.
Okay.
It's actually Brian's bridge.
Yeah, it was dedicated to.
No, there's two plaques.
There's two plaques.
The original plaque.
There's two plaques, one identifying, I'm pretty sure, to the WPA program, which we have a house museum there that interprets the house and the property. So if possible, I'd like to include that. And then just that you make a note that the Bryan Memorial plaque gets replaced on the bridge itself.
Dan.
I have two comments. Just wanted to mention to Larry. Back when the estate was first developed, 1898 to 1900, Mr. Roosevelt planted white willow trees all along the driveway there and a number of other deciduous shrubs. And those trees can virtually live in standing fresh water. And during the hurricane of '38, they all disappeared. And at some point, we thought about possibly restoring some of them, because at the north end there's still some, a couple of them left. And when I tried to sample planting them in areas closer to the middle road, it was a muck soil devoid of oxygen, and nothing could really live in there. And whether that was a result of sea level rise, I don't know. Again, I don't know about these things, but certainly I could tell you that they can no longer support a level of vegetation that they could at one point in the past. And the other question I wanted to know is, how long do you think that the road will be detoured, closed?
It's not going to be detoured.
Oh, it's not?
Well, it'll be affected by this next sheet. We're going to do it in 2 stages. And we're going to be using a signal light. They have one.
Oh, sure, right.
They do it a lot upstate. This is actually pretty low traffic volume through here, and I think it'll work well. So you'll always be able to get through. You just have to stop at a light once in a while now.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Dan and I live near there.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we'd call it low traffic.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
So we'll give you a clicker so you can.
I understand your concern. Any other questions or concerns? Is there a motion?
What is this? Motion looks like unlisted, neg deck.
Is there a second? Seconded by Rich. All in favor? Motion passed.
Okay, and talk to Dominic.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, okay.
Get that flow.
Give one.
You can hook up the line. Try to flow. Yeah,
This is my recycle.
Proposed median improvements to County Road 46, William Floyd Parkway, CP 5116, Town of Brookhaven.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Dawson. I'm a senior civil engineer with County Public Works Department. We're here today to present a stormwater remediation type project on William Floyd Parkway. This is the extreme south end as you approach Smith Point Park. From approximately the old Shirley Links golf course south to the Shirley Marina driveway entrance. We have Kevin Walsh here from VHB, who's our consultant in charge of the project design, and I'd like to turn it over to him.
Morning. As Jeff said, Kevin Walsh from VHB Engineering, Land Surveying and Landscape Architecture. As Jeff mentioned, the contract limits are approximately Karachi Boulevard down to Fair Lawn on William Floyd Parkway. The actual project limits are approximately 8,300 linear feet of the median. That's about 1.6 miles of the median within that stretch. The current conditions we have right now are a median with a deep swale in the middle of William Floyd Parkway, side slopes of about 3.5 to 1, which, as you can imagine, is not the greatest safety situation for any kind of a vehicle that leaves the roadway there. Currently, the swales and the medians serve to collect runoff from the highway. That runoff is transported south through pipes underneath the various crossing streets and directly discharged out into the bay in the area of Manor Lane at the south end of the project. There's little or no storage in the median, little or no infiltration due to the fact that the soils have been compacted and silted up over the years. You can see from some of the photos, I'm not sure if you can see from back there, but essentially you can see some areas where there's been some ponding in the median where it doesn't quite make it to the cross piping. But the intent of the system as it stands right now is to essentially directly convey the runoff from the median down to the discharge at Manor Lane. What we're proposing here is essentially filling the median to create to eliminate the steep slopes and create a more safe situation for vehicles that might leave the roadway. And obviously, since the median serves as a conveyance for the stormwater, we have to address the fact that the stormwater is still going to collect in the median, and we're doing that by installing StormTech or Cultech. There are a few different manufacturers. These plastic chambers, I brought a little sample in case anybody's not familiar with them. This is actually a miniature sample. They're actually, depending on the model, 6 or 8 feet long, 3 or 4 feet wide, and these are set in stone, enveloped in stone, and a fabric to keep the stone from getting contaminated by fines. So essentially the storage that you get for stormwater is within the chamber, but not just within the chamber, but also within the stone voids around the chamber. So what this does is provide intermediate storage and infiltration at various points along that median that doesn't exist now. As I said, the steep slopes will be eliminated in favor of more gentle slopes. The median area that we disturb will be planted with a combination of drought-tolerant / inundation-tolerant shrubbery, grasses, things of that sort to enhance the aesthetics. But certainly we don't want to plant anything in there that's going to become a roadside hazard and undo the safety improvements that we're trying to achieve here. So essentially the benefits we're talking about are improved roadway safety by virtue of eliminating these steep slopes within this swale in the median. Enhanced aesthetics are going to be a byproduct of this, obviously, since we're going to provide a fairly detailed planting scheme for the median, whereas right now it consists of essentially grass and trash, as you can see here for the most part.
Isn't trash a natural part of the environment around here?
This doesn't look that natural to me, I'm not sure. And then obviously a more efficient species. And then obviously enhanced stormwater quality at the discharge end, because we're providing a fairly good level of infiltration along the way, all the way down the system, that doesn't exist today. Okay. Questions?
Okay, one, the yellow stuff looks like polypropylene, the pipes?
I'm not sure the material based on the manufacturer. It's a plastic material, yeah. It's designed to take the loading.
All right, so basically you're going to line the trench that exists right now between the two road beds. You're going to line that basically with this stuff.
Yeah, essentially like you see on the detail here, depending on how much room we have, because there is a transatlantic cable actually that runs to the median here as well. But depending on how much room we have, there'll be the single larger sections or double sections, and that will be filled with stone and the median raised.
How much capacity do you have? Normally we would measure something like that, say for a 3-inch rainstorm.
Right. Right now there's no capacity. Technically the capacity we're talking about for the chambers that we have designed at the moment, the design is still evolving, amounts to about a 1/4-inch rainfall. Doesn't sound flush. Sorry?
You'd catch the first flush.
Yes, but I think what you have to look at there is we have limited room to deal with, and we also have zero capacity right now, so it's certainly not.
Well, any improvement is good, especially
exactly.
The first flush.
Yep.
So basically then, what you're saying, this system as you set it up then will be a shuttle system. If I'm reading the plans correctly, you're going to have essentially a long pipeline, if you will.
Yes, that's correct.
And then it's going to...
That's what you see here.
Okay, then you're going to end up at a termination point someplace.
At the existing discharge pipe. Right.
Okay, right now, is there any cleansing going on at the end of the discharge pipe?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And are there any plans to do anything at this point in time to rectify that situation?
Not at this point, but our feeling is that the infiltration that we're providing along the entire 8,000 linear feet will go a long way towards enhancing the water quality.
Well, again, let me just finish. You catch the first flush, and that's the most dangerous. That has the most volatiles and VOCs, whatever you want to call them. But you're still essentially having a point source more than anything else at the termination point.
That's true.
There's no way to remedy that.
Yeah. There are ways. I'm not sure.
Are they in this contract?
They don't fall within the scope of this project.
Wayne, I'm looking at the profiles, and I see you have catch basins or manholes, typical profiles. I'm not sure how far apart they be, but it looks like periodically you will have this, and then you show a sketch showing how you'll clean out any sediments, etc., that fall in there. But you keep saying it allow infiltration, but these pipes don't have perforations, do they?
They do have some perforations depending on the model, but they're open on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
yeah, and they have direct contact with porous stone on the bottom and up the sides. So
and
that's where
what is the depth of groundwater in this area?
It ranges from 6 to 7 feet, depending on where you are. We're obviously starting essentially at the bottom of the existing trench, so we're still a good 3 or 4 feet above groundwater in most cases.
Tom?
Thanks, Kevin. I heard you say you catch the first ordering sheet. What does that mean? You're catching it. You're not catching it, you're sending it to the bay.
Well, the volume of the chambers and the stone in the entire 8,000 linear foot run equates to approximately a quarter inch of rainfall over the contributing area to the system. Right now, everything that goes into the ditch in the middle of the road goes out the pipe. Under this,
are you changing the perk rate?
Well, I think we're going to be improving it drastically. Yeah, right now the only percolation or infiltration that takes place is through the surface, where the water essentially sits in the median. Over the years, that soil has been compacted, silted. Right. You know, this is intended to stay clean for the most part. Very little.
So your construction is going to go down below the existing grade?
Not necessarily.
So it's not going to change the compact?
No, that's what I'm saying is we're starting near the bottom of the existing trench and raising it up.
So you said you have storage capacity in those stones above the structure.
In and around
the structure has holes in it. Storage? Rain comes, rain happens, runoff gets to that, percolates and goes right into the tunnel and right out to the bay. It's not being stored there.
Well, technically we have storage capacity. Should that soil be...
What does that mean, technically? It's not storing.
Because that's how...
It's going right into the tunnel and out to the bay.
You're seeing the same...
Under the best circumstances, yes.
Yeah. So let me just ask a dumb question because I don't design these things. What if that tunnel and all those rocks that you're going to put in, what if that tunnel was lifted up 2 feet? Then wouldn't you actually have 2 feet times 1.5 miles of genuine storage?
It wouldn't be any different because presumably anything that got into that storage area would be infiltrated into the ground. When I talk about
we
storage,
started by saying your compaction has caused you not to have any perk. So we're not changing the perk rate. So let's just pretend nothing perks down, because whatever does perk is going to perk.
Let me just clarify that. We're going to provide a connection to the good material by virtue of the installation of this system. In other words, we're not going to sit it right on top of the bad soil. We're obviously going to...
so there is some...
Yeah, there's going to be some removal of the compacted material, and then this system sits in and around stone, which will have much better contact with the sandy soil than what we have right now.
And that'll go on stone, right?
On and around. The stone is under and around.
Scoop out the compacted soil, put stone in there, then put stone around.
That's correct.
So you have more of a...
That's what, I know it's hard to see from back here, but that's what this detail shows.
So that thickness above the tunnel is how many feet?
Minimum 18 to 20 inches.
Okay.
Because you have to...
If you took half of that, just raised it up half, you'd get 10 inches more of volume below that pipe. And 10 inches times 1 mile, times whatever the width is, would be volume that doesn't go straight to the bay.
I think we're
I'm not
around
explaining
each other
myself.
here.
You try it one more time.
No, I understand what you're saying. But what we're trying to accomplish is to get this to infiltrate as quickly as possible, because that's what helps us limit or retard what makes it to the outfall pipe. In other words, the more infiltration we can get in each one of these systems, the less runoff gets to the bay.
Yeah. The more infiltration that gets down.
Yes,
Out
and
of
it's
the
filtered,
system, the bed.
and it's
And
filtered
you're going to
through the
get
soil.
it down based on the width of that stone bed.
That's correct.
I'm not saying to make it smaller or larger. I'm saying leave that stone bed the same. We're not changing the rate that it goes down into the and avoids going to the bay. What I'm trying to change is the amount of water that stays there and eventually percolates down. So that I'm trying to make less water get in that tunnel by sitting it in the stone bed below the tunnel and not letting it go out so fast. The MS4 program is all about stopping these pulses. If the rain comes down, the water's going to get to the bay in 25 minutes. If you put it in a stone bed that's even just 10 inches more of stone, it's not going to, more is going to sit there and not run out the tunnel. I mean, that's just simple.
I think we're accomplishing the same thing because you're talking about the contact area between the stone and the chamber and the
contact area of interest is really just the width that is going down.
Right, and I apologize, but I'm not seeing how raising the system is really helping us with infiltration.
Because less water gets to the level of that pipe and runs out to the bay. The higher you raise that pipe, the more volume there's going to be of stone and void between the stones that would let water just sit there.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
I can't deny that it gives us more volume, but we also have hydraulic considerations here and that we're dealing with a very gradual slope down to the bay. We still have to get it to flow under the circumstances where we're not getting enough infiltration or there's a heavy rainfall or there's a high intensity. We still have to deal with the fact that we have to get the rainfall off the roadway and into the what used to be the ditch, which is why they're as deep. Part of the reason they're as deep as they are. Raising that, we only have a certain amount of depth to work with, so we're trying to fit this into a very limited area.
I'm taking your point a step further. Once that area fills up with water, the flow out doesn't change. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you want to catch that first quarter of an inch, give it someplace to sit around.
If you have a very big rainfall or multiple days of rainfall, that area below the pipe is not going to make a heck of a difference.
Yeah. Heavy rainfalls are not much of an issue. It's the first half inch.
Go ahead, Larry.
And you don't want to get to the bay. You don't want
That's what you want to
sit
sit in a percolation bed. That's beautiful.
Well, we can control that. It's almost being controlled naturally by the fact that we only have so much slope to work with from the upper end of the system down to the bottom end. So these chambers, but maybe I should mention, these chambers are going to go in flat. They're not going to slope the way the current pipe system slopes. They're going in flat. So the stormwater is coming in, it's going to be spread out over the size of the chamber, and then it's going to overflow to the next one. So I think we're accomplishing a large part of what you're talking about. I just don't know that we have a lot of room to play with the actual depth of the system.
Larry.
Two comments. The first is that forgetting the design at this point, it seems to me that you are not following the intent of the MS4 program, which essentially says we're supposed to eliminate discharges to these water bodies. And last month we had the report from Suffolk County on all the wonderful things they're doing with regard to implementing the MS4 program, and here we have a classic example of where it is needed, and yet it's being ignored. That bothers me. Now forget the design because, leave that to Tom and you discuss more. My other comment was, you say you're going to level out the median strip. Will that cause more accidents because people will be more inclined to make U-turns across the median?
I don't believe so, no. Not with the landscaping and the clear delineation of what's a median and what's not. It's certainly better than having cars go into the ditch and flip over. Which is, I think, the concern right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to get back to your question, Jeff may have a better answer than I do because I'm not familiar with the decision making that went up to the scoping of the project, but forgetting whether or not we have the ability, the budget, or the room to completely eliminate the discharge, we're certainly taking a situation that's a direct discharge with no mitigation whatsoever into the bay, and I think, in my opinion, vastly improving it by providing these opportunities for infiltration all the way down.
Yeah,
I
but we
think
don't, for quarter-inch rain now, we almost sneeze at those things. And we're, the 4 or 5 inch rains are...
Keep in mind that the quarter-inch I refer to is the total volume that's available. That it would be a quarter-inch if no water left this system through infiltration. Obviously, there's constant infiltration going on, so that quarter-inch is a little misleading in that unless you've had 10 rainstorms that completely inundate the soil prior and keep it from infiltrating at all, you're unlikely to see any discharge at the other end of this pipe under most circumstances.
How deep will the water be in that tunnel, I'll just call it a tunnel, during the periods of time when the rain has been going for a while? We're past the little rain, we're past the half-inch, we're into the second day of rains, and the soils are saturated, and it just keeps coming.
Well,
will it actually, you were just mentioning that it's kind of flat, so it's going to stay there. Is there a flow limitation to that cross area in the tunnel?
The flow limitation isn't really the cross-sectional area of the chambers, because the chambers are fairly large, and in some cases we have double. The flow limitation will be where we have to cross the cross streets with piping. So you have the chambers, it goes into the piping, back into chambers, back into piping, and we're limited as to how big that piping can be because we just don't have the depth to get from point A to point B. So anything more than 24
that's a perfect segue. Given that that's the limitation, those crossing pipe volumes, then that means that that cross section in the tunnel could be baffled even more, so the water doesn't go through.
Theoretically, sure. I mean, the piping
then
is
you'd
providing
really keep the water.
Yeah, the piping is providing a natural baffling, but we have to make sure that it can flow when it needs to.
Only as much as can get through those smaller volumes.
I'd have to think about that because
the idea is that everything you can do, and that's what Emerson's going to tell you in MS4, keep it. Don't let it go.
No, I think what we're doing is a vast improvement over what's going on now because there is no baffle, there is no restriction other than the pipe sizes right now. We're providing contact to the good soil and a means for that to be spread out over the width of the chambers to take place.
So if you're not going to change the plan, then here's an improvement that might change the
That's
plan
something we
and
can
improve
consider.
it. If you were to baffle that flow so that it's only as fast as the smallest hole that you're going to see later on, that would be a great way to hang on to that water.
Okay.
Mike.
You keep on talking about a hard pan over there, about 18 inches deep, compacted soil.
I don't know that I mentioned a depth but some of the borings showed, obviously the surface shows it in some of the pictures where this has just become so silted up over the years.
Okay, so it's silted up.
Yeah.
And again, I think I heard something about 18 inches.
No, the 18 inches was the cover.
Okay.
Ultimately the cover.
How deep is that hard pan? Is there any information on that? 'Cause that's
we have the soil borings. It's not very deep. It's 6 or 8 inches.
My point then is as follows. We've got a piping system that's proposed to be put in there. Obviously, we want to have infiltration go through. That's the point of the engineering exercise at this point in time. If you've got compacted soil, you're not going to have very much infiltration because the fines will have filled the spaces between each particle, or the fines are the particles. You will have very, very interlocked spacing. That's why you're not getting drainage right now. The photographs are very, very clear on that. If you eliminate the hard pan that's over there, if you scoop out the 6 to 8 inches, you're saying that you're going to get to good sand. Okay, that is widely spaced and has capacity for infiltration to occur. Has anyone done any calculation on that as to how much, say, a segment 10 feet long can handle? Okay, because basically, if you're putting this, the object is to get this into good soil. I don't see a commitment here to take the hard pan out. It seems like you're dancing around the point. No, I'm not seeing that.
No, I think. Well, the only reason you don't see it is because I'm not showing you construction. The actual construction details here.
Question: on the actual construction, are you going to get down to quote good soil?
Absolutely.
In other words, get rid of the hard pan.
Absolutely.
All right, that increases your infiltration level tremendously. Okay. All right. As long as that occurs, there are formulas out there for trying to figure out how much rain will be caught, and how much real capacity this thing will have. It may not be the first quarter inch this thing may have larger capacity. We don't know what it is.
Right.
So that's, I think, what's a stumbling point at this point in time. The second thing is, as Larry brought up, et cetera, there's nothing right now at the termination point in terms of control. That's something that concerns me greatly. At this point in time, if this thing comes to a motion, I couldn't vote for it without some control at the end. Whatever flushing occurs, you're still going to have a point source at the end. Something's got to be looked at to try and deal with that, whether it's a detention basin, whether it's a bunch of rocks to try and hold it, whether it's a swale or something like that. I think the project right now is deficient in not looking at that. Right now you have, with this piping system, you're essentially establishing a point source.
There already is a point source
there, Michael.
I know it's there right now, but they're essentially making one with this piping system. If they've got an 8,000-foot long pipe, okay, right now it's swales and things like that. They're catching some. It's dispersal probably at the end. With this thing, it's going to be a point source.
Can I just address that? Might I pass out some literature from this manufacturer that shows the installed situation in its entirety? I think there's some graphics in here that might prove helpful. What's important to note about this this system, it's not a piping system. It is not a conveyance system. It's a stormwater infiltration system. The system itself, the proprietary version of it, Cultex, manufactured product, is on the is accepted by New Jersey's TARP program as an approved stormwater treatment system. It is not a conveyance system. Now, if you picture, in that picture you could see, all these lie on a bed, and there's certain applications such as residential stormwater infiltration systems, there's parking lot infiltration systems. The benefit of this system is that it rests on a bed of gravel. The gravel is very jagged, whereas a pipe is very smooth, relatively. The more jagged surface that the water is conveyed upon gives it a higher management coefficient. More resistance to flow means that it doesn't shoot out as quickly. So the combination of the gravel bed, in addition to, you'll see on that diagram, at the downstream side of each of these segments of structures is a manhole, some kind of manifold of sorts, where whether we use two of these parallel or one, they get piped into a manhole. That manhole has two pipes, one coming in from the upstream system, one pipe going out of the manhole to the downstream system. We can adjust those pipes so that hydraulically we're forcing the water level to be at a certain point before it goes into the downstream pipe of that manhole, so that the upstream segment, the upstream system is utilized to its greatest capacity. That's a benefit of these kind of systems.
It's almost like sequential cesspools.
Exactly. There's an overflow and an overflow. The other thing to note too is this roadway has a positive drainage system, which means it's connected to catch basins, which pipe water to a point source, like you were saying. The limiting factor of this design and the allowable storage of these systems is the catch basins on the east and west sides of the travel lanes. And this is, of course, a divided highway. So we have a grate on the roadway surface, on the outside of the roadway surface, the median being on the inside. And we could lift, if we had the ability to, we could lift it. But the limiting factor is the elevation of the water in the median going through those pipes that cross the road to those catch basins. We don't want the water to come out of those catch basins and flood the street and adjacent properties. In addition, the pipe on Manor Road is connected to Unkachog Creek, which is tidally influenced, and the tidal water is currently above the invert of the outlet pipe.
You're describing a nice system, but I'm looking at the plans and things like that. I'm not sure at this point in time, is this a single connected system or are there disconnects in here? I'm looking at the final pages of this. I can't figure that point out.
There are disconnects in the sense that every time you leave the median and cross a cross street, and there are, I don't know how many cross streets in this section, the system goes from single or double chambers into a manhole, piped across the cross streets, and back into another chamber system. So it's a linear system, but it is broken up numerous times by the crossing and limited by the crossing pipes.
And there's manholes in here basically going down into soil, so you'll get infiltration there also.
Yeah, well, the manholes have a solid bottom. I mean, what the manholes serve to do with the sump in the bottom, there will be a 2-foot sump below the piping. Is the manholes tend to collect the solids, right, the settleable stuff, right.
The oddest system I've ever seen.
No, this is the notion of having those elevation checks that's the key to the whole thing. If the water can stay there for a while, not only does it infiltrate, but the hydrocarbons that we're trying to make go away, because that's where they're coming from the road. If you let it sit for a while, the bioattenuation, the bioremediation that's happened will get a chance. If you just bang it right through a smooth conveyance to the bay,
that and the fact
wrong stuff gets the hydrocarbons. So the longer you can let it sit there, now Navaji will tell you, don't let any water sit. Oh my God. So we got a little bit back and forth.
But if you're lucky, you get algae growing. You get bacteria growing on it.
So okay, now that you've explained the check that you can do to keep the volume from flushing through, that changes my understanding of the notion of how fast the stuff's going to get there out into the bay. The slower you can release it, the better. The more you can hang on to, the longer it's going to get chewed up. That's great.
Also, the commitment to remove the hard pan, I think, is a critical point. If they're getting down to good soil, then this thing becomes a giant.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a standard, and I apologize if I didn't make that clear. That's standard construction practice. These things are useless if they sit on top of hard pan.
Well, again, I was not clear, and I'm listening.
And I apologize for not making that clear. That's a construction detail that I kind of take for granted because that's how they're installed.
At the end of the pipe, then, what happens at the end of the pipe? You're saying that one of you guys said that it goes into Unkachog Creek, and there's also apparently another location where it goes in. What happens at the end?
It discharges the same way it discharges today, only mitigated a far site more than it is today. I mean, essentially today it runs down the swales through the pipes out into the bay. Period.
So basically, this is a staged interceptor system.
You can look at it that way.
Floatables will be less so also.
Yes.
Jim?
This needs DEC approval? All DEC permits will be obtained?
Any appropriate DEC permits will be obtained, yeah. It's considered a drainage, a stormwater improvement, and we're not changing the impervious area, so we're limited as to what we have to provide for the Speedies permit, but yes, we do have to get a Speedies permit.
It needs a Speedies permit?
Yeah.
There already is.
There should
charge. This isn't changed.
Yeah.
I think this is under their radar.
This is all on here.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious.
We have to apply for a Speedies construction activities permit, yeah.
Under Speedies, they should be able to catch the point source. The termination point is the critical aspect of it. I think under Speedies,
But
that's the way it should work.
This is not a monitored, permitted
MS4 storm sewer system, conveyance system is mapped, and this is on it. It should be, because it is an existing outfall. So they are redesigning what's feeding this outfall, but it's still going to exist. And Emerson and Lorne, they should all have this on that storm sewer conveyance map.
Actually, that's a good point. I worked with Emerson and Lorne and Matt and all the Cornell folks. I was the initial stormwater management officer for the county, and I created the initial stormwater management plan for the county to be in compliance with the MS4 program. I didn't have this at the time, so maybe you guys don't recognize me, but a big part of that program was completely disappointing to me because it, in fact, did not require elimination of discharges. It requires the 6 minimum measures, none of which are elimination of discharges. And actually, the state, you may have heard, was sued recently by the Peconic Baykeeper because of the lack of actual effectiveness of their program. So they're taking that back to the drawing board and coming up with something that might actually improve water quality. That being said, this project in and of itself is in compliance with MS4 in as much as the 6 minimum measures, public involvement, education, illicit discharge detection, elimination, maintenance, which these will become part of our maintenance program after construction is complete. What this essentially is treating water not at the end of the pipe where there's a huge volume and little time, but we're treating water up in the watershed areas where there's less water incrementally and more time to treat it because you don't have such high flow.
What is this right now at the termination?
It's just a pipe discharge.
That's it.
Just a pipe.
Yeah.
Sounds like it has a flapper valve on it.
Does it even have that?
Did you say it had a flapper
Does it
valve
have
or
a flapper
something?
valve?
Your
I'll bet it
title.
You guys did that Manor Road.
Still
I don't,
discharge.
no, there's no tidal valve on this pipe that I'm aware of. And it's not really needed because if you look at the high tide elevation and compare it to the pipe invert going into that final discharge pipe, it's lower. It actually is lower. The tidal influence does meander into the discharge pipe. It just doesn't hit the median.
Okay, Jeff, as far as coordinating with the MS4 crew, with Cornell, and letting them know that you're redesigning this particular point source discharge, and bring them in on it so they're aware of it, because has anybody, you have to speak with them, if any of them have ever done any measuring for how much comes out of that outfall, if they have any data at all.
We do have that outfall on the inventory, the county inventory. They're doing that on a continuous basis, and every time they do an update, they supply it to the designers. Likewise, when we do when we close out a construction project that modifies a drainage system or an outfall system, what have you, I'll give them the information in the form of record plans.
All right, good. So there is communication back and forth, so they can know now that this new project is going in.
Absolutely.
And hopefully then when new sampling is done, they can compare the data to the previous before situation, and let's see if it really is an improvement for one of their point source discharges.
Correct.
And that would be very good information for them.
Yes. Which they then give to us and we use in planning purposes.
I have a different line of questions. Has everybody finished with the technical aspect? I'm looking at your landscape plan on the last page there. And I know you're the engineer, you're not the landscape architect.
Thank you.
But would you be able, has this type of thing been done either on Long Island or New Jersey, someplace where there's similar conditions?
I'm sure there has. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but they were tempted to call it a bioswale. I'm tempted not to call it a bioswale because it's really not the way it's intended to function, but the plantings are similar.
Okay, but let me just give you some of my comments here. And I'm just speaking strictly as an amateur. I've done, over the past 5 years, done something similar to a shallow swale over on CR 97. Okay, trying to find some sort of sustainable plantings that would be very low maintenance and so forth. And in terms of your shrubs there, the arrowwood by Burnham and the elderberry. Arrowwood, if you use the straight species, can get up to be 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide, similarly with the elderberry. So there could be issues of sight distance and so forth in the median, possibly. I don't know. They can become quite substantial. And when elderberry is used ornamentally, usually you wind up cutting it to the ground every several years to get new growth, because it does become so gigantic. And I think it tends to suffer as well. The Ilex verticulata, the winterberry, can grow in standing fresh water. But however, if we have a drought like we've had years, those will be just wiped out immediately. There's another issue too of if we have bad winters, of salt getting into the swale. I know that when I've tried to plant seed mixtures of wildflowers and even shrubs that are ostensibly salt tolerant, having salt get into the roots just kills them right out. The seeds don't germinate, and the roots on the shrubs are affected as well. I've tried using gypsum, but that's you can't really do that in a situation like this. The gypsum does work, but perhaps in a large scale project like this, gypsum, or rather than say granular or powder forms, larger pieces of it could be incorporated into the soil mix that could deal with some of the salt. And I think whenever you add new topsoil or any way disturb the soil, you're going to get invasive species occupying immediately. You know, you get things like mugwort and Oriental bittersweet and so forth that could take over these plantings. So it brings it to an issue of maintenance. So these are not, you know, they'll look nice when you first plant them, and they might even look nice for the first couple of years, but you're going to have sustainability issues down the line.
Point taken. I think Jeff can attest to the fact that the actual landscape is a work in progress at the moment. We're working with the county architect, the county landscape architect, to come to some meeting of the minds on this. This was a first blush by our landscape architects, and certainly there's a lot more thought that has to go into that. Now that we know the exact conditions and the limitations and everything else.
Your biggest thing is the salt, and the droughts are in the summer.
Sure.
Do they work with Cornell?
Our landscape architects? I'm sure they do.
All right, Marianne.
Just listening to all the comments, yours included, my personal impression is that while this may be, to use your phrase, a vast improvement, what I hear people like Michael and Tom saying is because this is a change, a new project, you have the opportunity to make it a very vast improvement. And I think that there have been some suggestions here of things that you could look at before you finalize this. And I would hope that you would do that.
Well, we have a given budget that is on the capital program as we speak, and the available budget is completely used up by what we're proposing here. There's a fine line between how far north and how much of the watershed we can affect positively versus using larger systems at the downstream side. The benefit of using this system is that we can go all the way up to Karachi Boulevard, or the Shirley Links entrance, which is, I would rather catch a 1/4 inch of rain and treat it over 20 acres, for example. I'm not saying that this is what this system is, rather than a 1/2 inch over 10 acres, or 5 acres for that matter. So we're also working with the Civic Association in Shirley Mastic Beach, I'm sorry, and their request was to have as much of an impact as possible. Obviously we have to use the money that's allocated for us, so it was our decision to make it extend as far north as we could while using a DEC-approved stormwater treatment method.
Just listen to what Dan said to you about the plantings, right? I don't know what they cost, all right? Certainly they're going to be pretty. What you have now is not pretty. But if you eliminated the plantings, could you do something at the outfall at the end? In other words, aren't there ways in which you can take the money that you have now and maybe make some changes that would improve it even further?
It would improve it. We would have that ability if we didn't need to do any public involvement and outreach. We could make this an asphalt. We could just leave it dirt and just do grass seed and have it look like it does now without the trash. But the civics would like an improvement in the aesthetics.
Ask the civics to plant it.
It's in the median. It's not a safe. We
can't.
don't allow them to do
They
work
can't.
in the
Okay.
median area.
No, they can't.
All right. Well,
Larry?
When he mentions the budget, it's a nerve, because where this board has made recommendations to save the county money on some of their operations, we've been told budget is not our business. Consequently, our business is to do the best job that we can to evaluate the environmental impact. And I would say to the board that we should not be listening to the budget issue. We should be giving them advice as to what the best project is for this particular endeavor.
Let me just reiterate that this is a stormwater treatment product approved by DEC in New Jersey. It's actually on their verified proprietary treatment product list.
Sure, you want to use New Jersey as your comparison?
That's what New York does, because they don't do their own.
By the same token, these people are engineers, they're professionals. The county has professionals, engineers.
working for them, that's reviewing these projects. And the best project should come out of what these people can do and what the county professionals can do. That we might make suggestions about landscaping or about whatever it is, that's fine. They still have to, you know, get the neck deck out of it and get the best project they can for whatever the amount is, and that's it.
Tom?
Well, with regard to the concerns that I raised about decreasing the rate at which runoff makes it to the bay, that was one of my concerns. Increasing the time that water can be held so that it can cook or be bioremediated naturally. All those concerns were ones I raised primarily because of my understanding, which was incorrect, that this was a conveyance. And now that Jeff supplemented Kevin's explanation, I think I understand that they can work this thing to literally hang on to this volume of water. So there will be a decrease in the effluent from that pipe, and it'll be a better quality water, and it will perhaps be not so much at all during the smallest event. So my biggest concerns are already addressed in the design now that I understand more clearly how the design is being implemented. On top of that, is clarification now that we're getting back to contact with the natural sand soils that are phenomenal perks.
But going back to my point, the implementation is the most important thing. The professionals who are going to be inspecting the installation of this is going to have to make sure that the things are in place. And I've seen many a job that was reviewed by professionals that work for municipalities that don't exactly have it go in the way it was intended.
Well, that's a different concern. I wanted to just let the board know that my concerns have been addressed. That's
going to be a major part of what you say.
Get it right.
What you said also about buffering, putting baffles in. The baffles are in when they cross them, the intersections, because that's when everything gets constricted.
And it can be actually designed to make sure that it's as horizontal as possible. So I have far fewer concerns than what I misperceived as when I read the material and reviewed the maps.
Okay, Mike?
Okay. I'm tending to agree with Tom on this one. I still have concerns about the termination point because there's simply no information as to how much water is going to come down there. I think I'm going to make a motion in a moment. I don't want to do a CND. I'm going to do a recommendation, on this neg deck because I'm buying into the project, but with two recommendations. One, that the hard pan be removed, and I know this is where I'm going to go with Rich, and make sure the hard pan is removed. And also, I'd frankly like to see, or have them consult with Cornell to find out exactly what's going to be happening at that point source of discharge. Literally, we don't have the information as to what's going on. So I would say...
But add one to that.
Okay.
And that is the landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, landscaping has to be...
Landscaping has to be...
With the Cornell people, too.
In keeping with the conditions that might or might not occur.
Mm-hmm.
There's no perfect solution to it, but...
That's a work in progress, for sure.
You gotta at least try.
All right. I'll make a motion then, unlisted negative declaration following recommendations. One, that during construction the hard pan be specifically looked at and removed so that good soil is contacted. Second, that Cornell Cooperative as the MS4 gods of Suffolk be consulted as to what's going on at the termination point. Because again, I'm still very jumpy about that. And three, that the landscaping plans be coordinated. What's the best way to phrase it? With Cornell to make sure that they're survivable. I think it's a good word for it.
Viable.
Sustainable.
Sustainable. Viable and sustainable.
Good.
Right.
Okay. Any other concerns? Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Carol. All in favor? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. The last recommended unlisted action is the firefighting wells in the Suffolk County parks. That was in our packets this morning. Do we have anybody here to discuss that?
I'm here to answer questions. Bill Falk, went to the main company. Here's no presentation. The
Okay.
resolution is pretty straightforward. It just directs the Department of Health Services Groundwater Investigations and Well Drilling Unit to work with Department of Prez and the Parks Department to drill fire wells in Pine Barren for firefighting purposes.
Did you say Frez?
Prez, Fire Rescue Emergency Services.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know what it stood for. All right, thanks. Mike.
We've had occasion in the past, and this is more to the board than anything else, we've had occasion in the past to look at installations on county parkland. We had problems with the installation of a private facility, the cell tower at Vanderbilt. This, though, I think is a very, very different situation. If this was going to be connected up to Suffolk County Water Authority as well fields for them, I think this would be alienation. And actually, I'm having a memo drafted on that particular issue. But just sticking wells in, protecting parkland is not a problem. I think it well comports with the law as it exists. Basically, they're going to put encased wells in there, cap them off, and have them simply available to be opened up for pumper trucks and things like that. That protects parkland, so I don't see a problem with that. And even though there's another county agency that would be managing it. There's a quirk in the law as it exists right now, wherein if it's dedicated parkland, other county agencies cannot come in and manage, if you will, the parkland or put facilities in there. This particular situation, though, where it is protecting the parkland is different. If they wanted to park trucks up there, for example, this is a leading case. If they wanted to park trucks up there for, say, 6 months or a year or something like that, that actually would be alienation. This is a totally different situation. So, you know, legally it's fine. I don't see a problem with it. Again, if they were to be used by Suffolk County Water as part of their main system, yeah, then we would have a problem. The wells themselves are not an issue.
Karen.
Well, and I agree with Michael, I think to protect the forest, you know, it's needed. Will there be clearing of any kind?
No, the idea is to put them as uninvasively as possible, and just put them along the roads or in areas that they feel are needed. No clearing is envisioned. They drill wells now for groundwater investigations and around EPCAL and stuff like that, and they don't clear to do that. They just kind of go in there and drill wells when necessary. We're not talking about 12-inch, 15-inch mains, talking about, you know, 8-inch straight down to groundwater. Some of them might require pumps, but the fire department would bring in generators and pumps to do that. Other ones they can just pump right from the trucks. And like you said, the goal is to protect them.
Yeah, if the fittings are compatible, that's a critical thing.
I spent yesterday morning qualifying one of our trucks at the county facility and learned a lot of stuff about how you do that. But it turns out we have to take every fire truck in the county, sit it next to a pool basically, and suck water out of that thing and then pump at capacity with RPMs and whatever. Long story short, you're sucking from a standing bit of water. I don't understand these wells as they're described providing 400 gallons per minute. How do you get a...
That number was
that?
Pumped. That was based on a generator and a pump. That was a big, I guess it was a maximum...
So this is simply a pipe down.
Yeah, it's just a hole ground.
There is no...
No, nothing permanent that would be there.
Pumping,
no,
whatever, right.
No.
So it's just a...
I mean, there's
which is great. That's all you need.
Yeah, there's
that's all we
potential
want.
along the road. There's electricity to maybe put a generator and a pump there, but basically it's a hole in the ground. The 8-inch main apparently has a maximum capacity of 400 GPM. That's what I came from.
So it's based on a line. Okay, so and then to Kara's point, it'll by definition not be a lot of clearing because we want to run trucks through there fast, so it's going to be roadside. That sounds like it's
the whole idea is to keep it
I can't think of anything else to worry about.
It's the middle of the woods someplace and you can't get to them anyway. But if there was a road or a pathway that goes through a park, yeah, they may consider putting it on the road in the path that's in.
This goes a little bit far afield, but you're dropping these well casings in there and you're going to be capping them off. Is Frez going to be looking at the individual fittings of the fire trucks? Because there's different ways, different types of fittings. Or are they all standard compatible? That's the question.
Well, that's where Fres plays a role. That's their, it's Parks property, so it's Parks is involved. The county well drilling unit is in the health department. That's why they're involved.
Yeah, if they're still there.
Well, yeah, we're working on that.
Yeah. What is it? 5 trucks, 2 people right now?
It's something like that. Yeah.
5 new trucks, 2 people. Okay, sorry.
And then Fres's job is to basically say, okay, looking at a map, where do you think they're best placed? How far apart? What kind of wellheads do you need? Is 8-inch too big? Is 8-inch too small? What kind of mains? And they kind of coordinate with the fire service to figure out what is actually necessary.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, to put it bluntly, I used to be a fireman a long time ago, and in my township, they did try and coordinate that. I have until recently we had no water mains in my home village, and everybody's pool was on a list. And basically, they would just throw a big trash pump in there and use that, and they'd have the big pools. Pump it into the pool, get the sediment out, and then pump it through the truck. Collection station, if you will, more than anything else. And we made sure that everybody's connections, if you will. I forget what the hell they call them. Tom, do you remember? What are the connections called?
Couple.
Okay, well, whatever. We made sure that they all were compatible, and that's the critical thing here.
Yeah,
because you don't want to come in with something that's equipped for 8 inches and hitting a 6-inch well, and suddenly you have no suction.
Resolution sets the policy, and then we would hope the departments would obviously work together to make sure everything's usable.
Michael, I didn't know you lived in New Jersey.
Can't you tell by the toxic waste?
No, but I could tell by using the word township.
I live in the township.
There is no such thing as a township.
There is a town. I apologize. I have never lived in New Jersey, nor do I have any desire to live in New Jersey.
I happen to agree with it. That's a pet peeve of mine too, actually.
Okay, fine. Yes, town planning director.
Okay, sir. Did
Chalkboard.
you want to say something?
Yeah,
Please state your
Chris
name.
Lubasich, I'm with the health department. I don't know that the well drillers have capacity to drive 8-inch wells. They don't, the sampling wells, the monitoring wells they drive are not that big. I don't know that they have the equipment.
This talks about
I can't say
6.
they don't.
Does it say 6? I might be
Yeah, it says 6 in the thing.
6 then. I'm sorry.
Typically it's a 4-inch monitoring well or a 2-inch monitoring well, so I don't know if they have
the data came from the well drilling unit, so.
Yeah. No, I just know fire
If I
trucks.
said 8, I misspoke.
Fire trucks do, to put it bluntly, suck a lot of water when they're really going, and the diameter of the fitting is an issue.
Right.
But that's your job, not mine.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion. This is unlisted negative declaration.
Is there a second? Seconded by Carol, all in favor? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
You're the lawyer, not me.
Okay.
That means I'm right.
All right, moving on, other
You're
business.
right, but you're never in doubt, that's for sure.
I'm never wrong.
First thing, updated county environmental assessment forms. We have the long and the short form.
Michael asked that that be postponed to another meeting.
So he's here?
Yeah, Phil's
Okay,
here.
fine, we will postpone it until next month.
That helps.
Is that the end?
Nope.
Yeah. I'm with Rich.
I want Joy to speak about the annual meeting. Please go ahead and speak. I will pass out forms announcing.
Let me know about this, but fair enough.
Every year,
They want you to come.
New York State DEC has a meeting that is addressing topics of interest to conservation commissions and to environmental management councils, of which CEQ is one. This is designed specifically to in one day, to present DEC commissioners, DEC directors, to answer questions but more importantly, to provide an update on what is happening currently in DEC in regard to policy. Gloria attended one meeting. It's very informative. It's on a level, a technical level. They don't talk to us as if we don't know the issues. So I am definitely going, and this is a draft agenda. I have the ability to call Carl Berger and say we would like something added at this point, you know, right now. The meeting is June 4th. I particularly am concerned about the issue on our agenda, the issue of the state eyeing the takeover of Seeker, and that you had in your packet, we had in our packets. So I will do a lot of discussion of that to find out some questions. But if you have any questions that you would like me to raise as you scan this agenda, please let me know.
Thank you, Joy.
In addition to the issue about state doing more with regard to seeker, I think the next biggest issue confronting the state is, in fact, is what are they doing with regard to the hydraulic fracking?
Yes.
And it would be nice if they could share something, because they've been very quiet about what's going on.
And will the water resources section, watershed planning, I know the state has a real wonderful watershed agency system throughout the upstate. Will it include aquifer protection items? Because we need a aquifer protection agency.
So this is a question for Ron and Tridger. Specifically, could you repeat for me?
I just wanted to make sure, you know, in water resources, the discussion there, water quality management, aquifer protection.
Yes.
Would be part of the work, you know.
Anything?
Joy, where is it being held this year?
It's in the DEC building.
Oh, on
Yes.
Broadway in Albany?
Yes.
Okay. Albany. 625 Broadway, right there, okay.
The energy efficient building. And if you go, it's the coldest building I've ever you sit and your feet get numb because it's so cold.
This during summer or winter?
So where
No, it's always in June.
Like our historic meeting.
Larry?
Yeah, going back to the agenda, your 1110 thing, Office of Climate Change.
Yes.
You know, they have a speaker, I guess, on a policy analysis and a communications manager. But what is the state doing with regard to implementing plans to deal with climate change? You know, I raised it with regard to this bridge we were talking about earlier, but it seems to be that based on what we know now, that there ought to be some provision for implementing plans to deal with it, as opposed to just a policy analysis and communications.
In our
Seawater rise.
in our conference in October, Mark, these two people spoke extensively. That was our theme. And Mark Lowry and Mary are very, very good technically, speak very well. So I'm sure they will address this. Do you want to know anything specific?
No, I just want to.
What is the state doing?
What is the state doing, and you know, if by extension, how is the county? I know that's not what you're doing, but since Kara's here, how is the county moving forward and dealing with these issues, particularly since our entire county is essentially at sea level? And are the highway departments and so forth being directed to consider these issues in their design, so that 20 years from now we're not having to go back and rebuild things that we shouldn't have to?
In our conference in October, the hydrofracking issue was because it was a statewide conference, and of course that was the thrust of questions, and we had some very good people that are in opposition. But the Times had an article about a month ago about how many jobs hydrofracking is bringing, and that's an upsetting issue when that's considered. How much is that going to be considered over in environmental concerns?
I see the NIPERG people are going door to door now, getting signatures on petitions to, not petitions, I'm sorry, letters to send to Albany against hydrofracking. So somebody came to my door last night.
But Joe Martin's was supposed to be issuing progress reports, and I don't know if I saw something a while ago in the newspaper, but Larry, have you seen
As I understand, over 20,000 comments sent in by the January deadline, and you know, that's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not through, but I think, you know, a progress report would be nice.
I'll find that out.
I also had heard that they don't want to say anything right now, that they're running scared, and they're just playing it very close to the vest at this point in time.
Well, I'll ask.
Yeah, please, thank you. Tom?
George, Suffolk County's on a list of too far up on the bad list or down on the good list with regard to ozone levels in the county.
Yeah.
And air doesn't seem to make it onto this agenda.
Okay.
But as this body
I'll
looks at
ask.
projects, we don't typically ask ourselves, we do ask ourselves about nitrogen and sewage capacity, but we don't ask about traffic volume and other things. It would be nice to understand whether the state DEC has any shareable plans on such air quality. If we start asking to be capped, or if we start having to have projects review with such exceedances in mind, we'll need guidance on how to do that.
Tom, I'd have to disagree with you in one respect. The idea is good, but we've had numbers of traffic studies, and we have looked at that. For example, when Legacy Village first came out, we were looking at some of those specific issues.
It'd be nice to know if we have to look at it relative to a number,
Yeah,
or just a
that's
general
true.
concept. And so if they're going to pop a TMDL kind of a number with regard to air,
That would be nice.
County's been on a non-attainment list for 25 years.
Right.
Yeah, so is the state okay with that? Because we'll just keep going as is. too.
Well, what's the point?
They want us to become New Jersey.
As far as
Oh, you're from there.
So
All right, so I grow blueberries. I really am from New Jersey, so there.
I hear questions about climate change. What is the state doing in regard to climate change? Share what is information about hydrofracking, what guidelines and time guidelines for reporting, and ozone levels, traffic volume, shareable plans. What
And
else?
Kara brought up the
aquifer
aquifer
protection.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, the
For the water?
aquifer protection for Long Island.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joy. Any other concerns? Mike?
A couple. One, just to let everyone know, I think it was last month we were talking about the Shinnecock Canal campsite for the RVs. The county has canceled 200 reservations for that and shut it down for the summer. I guess in response to partly what happened at CEQ. This is what I'm getting. They shut it down. They're not losing very much money because they weren't taking in very much money for this stuff, but they have shut it down. And you know, I don't know exactly why, but I will say this much: we have to be very careful on how far we go on designing projects and things like that. When you have an executive project, our job is to ID the impacts and try and mitigate, etc. But we can't fully redesign. Maybe it may be that we went too far. At least this is my personal opinion as to what happened. Some personal choices or personal design ideas started creeping in, and I think this is what they're reacting to in certain ways. There's probably other stuff going on, but
Who is they? Who is
some
they?
of the people? Some of the people in Parks Department. This is what was conveyed to me because I called up and asked.
As we moved our discussion forward, the latter parts of our discussion allowed that parking lot to continue to be itself for quite a long time, which is the standing stock of reservations that they would have on the books.
Maybe.
So the notion that they would have to wipe out a year's worth of reservations in a parking lot that we weren't really asking to do very much with. We were in fact increasing the temporary.
Well, I think it was.
So it sounds like if it's true that it's attributable to our guidance.
No, not totally, but partly is what was conveyed to me. And let's just say it was. I think we went a little too far. We just have to be careful about it.
I disagree.
I disagree. We went too far.
Let's
put that on our agenda. The next time
the project to our specs.
Let's have more discussion about that because I think we were.
Well, no. I mean, for example, you were talking about trying to push something 8 feet back. They would end up in a gully. We didn't know that. We couldn't see that. Okay, that's the redesign thing that I think caught in their throats. And I'm not singling you.
They weren't asked
I know they were under a gun. I don't have full details on this. I know they were under a gun, etc., and they just apparently something blew their mind, or maybe several things blew their minds.
I think, though, in that situation, then, Mike, when you're
Just have to
saying
be
it
careful.
here, it's hearsay, and until we hear directly from the Parks Department about that issue,
Well,
be good to follow up.
then we'll follow up. But until then, it's not on the table, and it's not an
I
issue.
just think we have to be careful, that's all. The other thing is West Nile and the Asian tiger mosquito. I got a ton of stuff on this. I'm vice chair of the mosquito control committee right now.
Don't go too far, Michael.
I won't go too far. This is not hearsay either. What it boils down to is I've been handed a whole bunch of maps. The Asian tiger mosquito is a really bad bug. It's out there. Problem is larvicides won't work against it very well because of its breeding habits. It breeds anywhere and everywhere. It can be in a cup and you can have an infestation. Adulticiding is very difficult because of the habits of the bug. It's not something that comes out like the Hulex, say at dusk and at dawn when you can hit it with an adulticide in a concentrated area. It just doesn't work like that. It spreads all over the place, and it also flies during the day, and it is not a real good target at night, which is maybe a preferred way of getting it when there are not as many people out there. So it's difficult to deal with. The chemicals that are in the arsenal right now and authorized by the EIS are not very effective against it. There's some new stuff in the pipeline. It's not been approved by DEC yet. It's not been approved by EPA yet. There may be emergency authorizations this summer if the problem becomes really, really bad. We've already been looking into a supplemental EIS, which is demanded by the main EIS, if we want to start changing chemicals. nobody's really sure what's going to work on this stuff or not, or how it's going to work, etc. There's different formulations out there. It also turns out the ATM is not just a cash machine, it's a big carrier of West Nile virus. And I have some maps, which I'm not going to pass out right
Say it was a big
ATM, Asian tiger mosquito.
Oh.
Okay, it's also a cash machine.
Is New York State, if New York State approves it, for use, are they gonna do a secret review?
They would do, it gets registered with New York.
They'd have to.
They would have to. They would have to. It gets registered, or rather, if they attempt to register it, they do their own secret review for use of the chemical, and then how we use it is our own EIS supplemental.
I just want to know whether they do.
But EPA has to approve it on the first.
Yeah.
Before it
I see my dear, good friend Jack Nasca is still, I thought he had, when Mr. Pataki was elected, he disappeared from, Mr. Nasca disappeared from
Apparently he's a paid lecturer now.
Eh?
He might just be a paid lecturer now.
He's back on the agenda.
One interesting thing about the ATM, according to the maps that I have, it seems to be breeding not in the pine barrens and not in the marshes or anything like that. It seems to breed in heavily populated areas, which is a little bit different from the Culex species, which seem to like woodlands and things like that. This stuff, anywhere according to the maps. And is right now in the South Shore. Babylon and Islip seem to have the major concentrations. So you may be hearing about it in the future. We may get hit with paperwork relatively quickly from out of nowhere once everybody on the state and the federal end get their act together. Because I'm pretty positive the county is trying to, at this point in time, gather the information that is necessary to
I guess the thing that my next question is, if it becomes an emergency.
That's a different authorization.
Okay.
Health.
If it's a health emergency, we're not going to have time to do a supplemental or anything else.
Health emergency declared by the either state health department or by the county health commissioner, who has independent jurisdiction, would authorize experimental chemicals to be used in an extreme emergency. 6 months ago we looked into that, and Joyce Rodler at DEC and Vinnie Palmer said that they would look into an emergency response because we know the registration process can be fairly long. Chris, I think actually you were at the meeting when we were talking about that stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully, last time I talked to Joyce, she was looking into it, and again, emergency, health emergencies, etc., all rules go out the window. The problem is how you knock the bugs off is very, very difficult. I mean, Suffolk County wants to avoid doing what Nassau has done for the last couple of years, which is spray the entire county with adulticides. Nassau, in response to what has happened a couple of times, I think it was 2009 and 2010, literally sprayed the entire South Shore and then the entire North Shore. They covered the entire county with adulticides, and that's something that our county wants to try and avoid. But it may happen, so there you have it. And that's not hearsay.
I'd like to request that CQ ask planning for an update on the wastewater management section of the comprehensive plan. We wrote a letter on that previously, and it's supposed to be underway, but I'd like to have a status report at one of the meetings.
Okay.
So we could do that.
Gloria? Just one comment back on the air quality, backing up a little bit. Couple of things. I understood that that most of the problems with ozone comes from the coal burning plants in the Midwest, and because the prevailing westerly blows it over here. That's how you wind up having the monitoring station in Riverhead registering a higher ozone level than points west. And then secondly, in terms of transportation, as in all metropolitan areas, is done on a regional basis. And the Transportation Improvement Plan for the region, the TIP, has to conform to EPA air quality standards. And they're always kind of tweaking it and running the numbers to bring it under the line. So that is a very kind of active thing. And it's almost futile, but nonetheless, they continue to do that. So it's an ongoing kind of thing.
Okay, anything else?
He sent me a link to a Suffolk County Health Department site. They ask for permits. They have the whole permitting process on the internet for Public Works and for the Health Department. And also you could look up what permits are already issued on site, if you have a tax map number.
Yes, for private stuff.
Beg pardon?
It's for private stuff.
For private stuff. And I think that's, you know, steps ahead, if not miles ahead.
We got into the 20th century finally.
You may be coming closer to the 21st century with this. I think
At least out of the 50s.
I think it's excellent.
Michael, does that mean you're theater?
When I was at the press conference,
Three of them.
announcing
Yeah.
that we were,
A UNIVAC.
we were looking at
A Wang.
index cards, 3-ring binders, you know, like literally of how things were kept. And so they really did a great job of making this happen in-house primarily. So
It's a well-constructed site also. There's a tutorial that you can watch. It's you know, movie, and it's really nice. And I guess there's a login, and you can come in as a member, I guess, and so if you're a professional, like an engineering firm or what have you, you can do your business through there, and it's, to me, it's, I mean, the town of Huntington, I know the town of Huntington is doing something like that with building permits, among other things, and it's kind of neat.
My township has hit the 1980s recently with this
Your
stuff.
township?
Okay. Tom?
In our folders, we had the EAF forms and comments about how they could be considered or reconsidered. We've had this state seeker cloud coming on the horizon about us. I'm into these kind of forms and this study stuff because there's so many questions that you want to ask. So part of my head, so yeah, but let me think of another question to add. Question 58, it becomes such a long thing. So I don't want to make the forms longer, but it's there. And the form asks a lot of these questions in a yes-no manner. And so I'm just wondering if as a group there's appropriate time for us to consider whether there's a different way to ask the question or to get answers from people. Because yes-no is something. And a different way to get the same kind of feedback is to say how severe is the impact and how, duration. Because a yes could be, yeah, I can't deny there's something, it's going to last about a week. But it just looks like a yes on the form, and then you're like, well, what do I do with that?
Well, that's the trouble. I suggested a few changes myself, but they're all things that are already incorporated in the document, but they're not specific. You know, how many new jobs will be created? We'd like to know that. I mean, that could be important to the county. How many new jobs will be created if this project is approved? There are questions on the EAF and parts 1 and part 2 that addresses that, but in a vague way. And I just think we should be more specific.
Okay, well, we will discuss that next
Why
month.
don't you bring your concerns
Yeah,
and
so
we'll
keep
work
that-
on it.
Okay,
Yes, and we're gonna discuss that in detail next month.
We'll take it in.
Can I make a suggestion? It's always hard in the meetings when you have very technical points to fully go into them, especially if they're extensive. It might be helpful if you were to write down some of your concerns and pass it out in the next packet to CEQ members,
Or Tom, just
so that we
email
just see it, or whatever you've got.
Well, mine
What
is
changes?
attached to the back.
Yes, we have it.
Mine's attached to the back.
All right, but we'll discuss that
But I
next
mean,
month.
there are so many more that we can come up with that would make the document much more meaningful and much more specific.
But it also makes it look like a liability because someone says, look at this thing. And that's what that builds justification of a case that somebody else is making about this is always going to block us.
I used to
don't
edit
want to
every.
be subjected to
I
that.
used to edit every document my staff put out. Okay, and I used to take all the adjectives out. There's going to be a very big impact from this. There's going to be an impact. Because once you put something in black and white, you know what happens? It comes back to bite you.
Yep. Okay, is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting.
Rich
And move to
seconded,
adjourn.
all in favor? Motion passes. Thank you,
I
everybody.
was just going to say, for those yes/no questions, you were talking about impact and then duration. Just do a very simple,
relating
like
from
1 to
site
3
meeting
kind of
that we
thing.
had
Low,
with
medium, high.
Public Works and also the conversation that I had with somebody they gotta get their house together.
Yeah.
And I need direction.